The plane hums steadily through the sky, the low murmur of passengers. Filling the cabin, most are settled in, some sleeping, others scrolling through their phones, a few chatting quietly. But one figure stands out, a silver-haired man sitting near the window, his posture straight, as if he's holding on to something more than just his seat. He wears the faded remnants of a World War II veteran's uniform, the fabrics soft with age, but the medals on his chest still glimmer faintly in the overhead light. His eyes scan the room, not with curiosity, but as if he's been here before, many years ago. In a different time, his hands rest gently on the armrests, his fingers slightly trembling, the only sign of his age. But his face is hard and unmoving, weathered by decades of memories. Most people wouldn't know how to begin understanding the life that has shaped him. The flight attendant notices him from across the aisle. She's just started her rounds, checking the seat belts and making sure everyone is settled. When she spots the elderly man standing, she notices right away that he's been standing for far longer than the usual passengers. The crew has been on their feet for most of the flight, but they know the rule. It's a safety measure. All passengers must be seated during the ascent for their own protection. So she approaches him with a smile, polite and warm. She's used to this. She's done it hundreds of times on other flights. But something about him makes her hesitate for a second. His presence commands attention. There's something in the way he holds himself. It's more than just an old man standing in a crowded aisle. There's history in the way he stands there, a weight to it, like he's carrying the past with him, the kind of weight most people would never understand. She gently taps his shoulder. "Sir," she says, her voice kind and professional, "it's time to sit down now for your safety." He looks at her slowly, his eyes unfocused, as if he's hearing her, but not truly listening. For a moment, the flight attendant wonders if he even understands what she said. But he looks at her again, and this time his gaze sharpens a little, as if he's trying to focus, his expression unreadable. Then, after what feels like an eternity, he speaks, his voice gravelly but calm. "I'm fine," he says. "No need to worry about me." The flight attendant smiles again, a little unsure. But she's not one to let things slide. She's done this job long enough to know that rules are rules. "Sir, I understand. But for your safety, I really need you to sit down," she says. And the words hang in the air between them. He doesn't move. He doesn't respond immediately. Instead, he seems lost in thought, staring out the window, his hands tightening ever so slightly on the armrests. It's as if he's in another world, a world that no one else on this plane can see. For a brief moment, the flight attendant wonders if he's unwell, or if perhaps he doesn't fully understand the instructions. His age, his demeanor suggests that he's someone who has lived through things that most people can't even begin to imagine. His uniform is a clear indication of that. But it's the way he stands that pulls at her curiosity, as if he's holding on to something beyond the ordinary rules of air travel, something that isn't about the plane or the flight attendants or the safety regulations, but about him, his history, his legacy. And that's when she realizes it. Something in her gut tells her that this man's refusal to sit down has nothing to do with her or the flight itself. It's something deeper, something personal, something tied to a life much bigger than the cabin they're in right now. And she feels it, the shift in the air, the subtle tension that builds between them. The flight attendant stands there for a moment, unsure of what to do. The veteran's response has left her with a strange feeling, something that lingers in the air. She tries to push it aside and stick to the protocol. But it's harder than it seems. The man isn't just any passenger. He's different. The way he holds himself, the way he's looking out the window, like he's seeing something no one else can see. His eyes distant, his hands gripped tightly on the armrests, as if bracing for something that's long past, but somehow still present. She takes a small step closer, her voice softer. "Now, sir, I really must insist. It's important for your safety that you sit down," she says. This time her words feel heavier, like they're not just about rules anymore, like they're reaching for something more personal. She's trying to be kind, trying to make him understand, but she doesn't know if she's reaching him at all. His gaze remains fixed on the horizon, the faintest frown on his face, as if he's hearing the words, but they don't matter to him. She watches him, for a moment, wondering if he's confused, or perhaps he's stubborn. But then there's a shift in him, his shoulders tense, and for the briefest second, she thinks she sees a flicker of something dangerous, something wild deep in his eyes. But just as quickly as it appears, it's gone, replaced by the calm of someone who's seen too much, and carries it quietly. He lets out a slow breath, and speaks again, his voice steady. But lo, I've stood for a long time, miss, much longer than this. He says each word measured, but there's a sharpness there that catches her off guard, something that feels like a challenge. His eyes finally turn back to meet hers. This time they don't look away, they lock on her face with an intensity she wasn't expecting. It makes her take a half step back, not out of fear, but because she feels something in the weight of his gaze, something that demands respect. The cabin feels different now, the air heavier. It's as if the other passengers can sense the exchange happening between them. Whispers start to trickle through the rows, soft murmurs, as people start to notice the tension building. The flight attendant knows she needs to do something. She can't just let this go on forever. The rules are clear, but there's something about this man that makes her question them, something about him that makes her want to know more, something that goes beyond the uniform, beyond the medals, beyond the faded history of a war she doesn't fully understand. She stands her ground, but she can't shake the feeling that she's not dealing with an ordinary situation. She's dealing with a person who's lived through things most people can't even imagine, someone who's fought in battles where the stakes were far higher than a flight safety regulation. His refusal to sit down is a small act, but it feels like a statement, an unspoken message to everyone on the plane. It's as if he's saying that he's not bound by the same rules. They are that his experiences have shaped him into someone who stands outside of time, outside of expectations. The flight attendant swallows hard, unsure of how to respond. Her thoughts are racing. She wants to be firm, to make him sit down, but at the same time she doesn't want to break something in him. She doesn't want to disrespect him in a way that could never be undone. She glances around the cabin. The other passengers have gone silent now, their eyes on her, and the veteran waiting for something to happen. But she knows there's nothing she can do to make him sit down. That won't make things worse. The moment is too big, too heavy to simply dismiss. She takes a deep breath, looks him in the eye, and for the first time in this entire exchange, she lets her guard down. She's not the flight attendant anymore. She's just a person standing before a man who's seen and endured more than she ever will. The veteran remains still, his eyes unwavering as they meet hers, and for a moment it feels like the entire cabin has disappeared, like it's just the two of them standing in the middle of some silent battlefield, a battlefield that only he truly understands. The flight attendant feels a rush of emotions. She's never had to deal with anything like this before. She's encountered stubborn passengers plenty of times, but this is different. The man is not just refusing to comply, he's standing his ground, as though he's making a statement that echoes far beyond the confines of the airplane. He's not just a passenger to be dealt with, he's someone who has lived a life that most people could never fully grasp. She feels the weight of his gaze settle deep within her. She feels something inside her stir, something that is almost uncomfortable, a kind of respect that she wasn't prepared for. It hits her like a wave, and in that moment she realizes she can't force him to sit down. It would be a betrayal of something far greater than the rules of this flight. She doesn't know why, but she feels it deep in her bones. The other passengers are starting to notice the tension now, some whispering softly to each other, some pretending to be busy on their phones. But the energy in the cabin has shifted. It's not just a flight anymore. It's become a silent witness to an unspoken struggle. She looks down at the man's hands, gripping the armrest, his fingers pale from the pressure. They're not shaking, but there's a tension there, a reminder that this man has lived through things that most people can't even begin to imagine, things that have shaped him into who he is today. The flight attendant steps back just slightly, still keeping an eye on him, but giving him space. She tries to think of what to say next. she could try again. To convince him to sit down, she could tell him that it's for his safety, but something inside her tells her that those words would mean nothing to him. The rules of the plane don't apply to him, not in the way they apply to everyone else. He's not afraid of safety regulations or rules set by the airline. He's a man who's stood in the face of danger, stood when others couldn't or wouldn't, and she knows in her heart that she isn't going to be the one to break him. She can see it in the way he holds himself, in the way his posture remains firm. And proud, his eyes aren't cold, they're not defiant, they're just tired, in a way that makes her wonder how many battles he's fought, how many moments of loss and survival he's lived through. She feels a knot form in her stomach, something uncomfortable, but real. She wants to ask him where he's been, what he's seen, but she knows better. She knows that a man like this doesn't share his story with anyone that easily. It's a part of him that remains buried deep within his soul, and she's not sure she has the right to dig it up. She's not sure anyone does. A soft murmur runs through the cabin again as a few more passengers exchange glances. The flight attendant hears bits of the conversation floating around her. Most of them are curious, wondering who the man is and why he's standing, but some of them are starting to feel uneasy. They don't understand. They don't know the kind of man they're dealing with right now. She turns to look at the veteran again this time. There's something different in the way she looks at him. There's respect in her eyes, a kind of reverence for someone who has lived through more than she could ever imagine. She feels the weight of that respect settle heavily in her chest, and for the first time in the conversation she doesn't feel like she's the one in control. She doesn't feel like the one holding the power over the situation. Instead, she feels like she's standing before someone who has a power, all his own, a quiet strength that cannot be shaken, and it leaves her speechless. She doesn't know what to do next. But she knows one thing for sure: she isn't going to force him to sit down, not anymore. The flight attendant stands there in silence, her mind racing as she watches the veteran. He's not just an elderly man, he's something more, something ancient, in the way he holds himself, a reminder of a time long past, a time that feels distant yet somehow still very present. His presence fills the space between them, and she's left unsure of what to do next. She tries to swallow the lump in her throat, but it's no use. Her heart pounds as she realizes this isn't about rules anymore. It's about something deeper than that. She tries to think of what her next move should be, but it feels like the weight of history is bearing down on her. She looks down at the floor for a moment, and when she looks back up, she notices something in the way he's standing, his feet planted firmly on the ground, as if he's ready to face something he's been preparing for his whole life, his hands still gripping the armrests, but not out of fear, out of a need to steady himself. She feels it now, the undeniable force of his quiet strength. It's as if every part of him has been shaped by decades of hardship and survival, a man who's faced down the worst of humanity and stood tall against it. She thinks about his uniform and what it represents, the medals on his chest, each one a story, each one a reminder of the battles he's fought. She wonders what it was like for him to wear those medals back then, and what it's like for him to wear them now. Does he still remember the wars? Does he still think about the comrades he lost? Does he think about the moments when standing tall meant the difference between life and death? She doesn't know the answers to these questions, but she's beginning to understand something about him, something that makes her feel small in comparison. It's the way he's chosen to stand now, to resist the urge to sit down, to defy the very rule she's been sent to enforce. It's a quiet act of rebellion, but not the kind of rebellion that's meant to be seen, not the kind that demands attention. It's the kind of rebellion that comes from a place much deeper than rules or authority. It's the kind of rebellion that comes from a life lived without compromise. And it's in this moment that the flight attendant realizes she can't force him to sit down, because there's something in his eyes, something in the way he holds himself that tells her this man has seen things she can't even imagine seen them. and survived them with a resilience that can never be broken. She thinks of her own life, her own small problems, and the struggles she faces each day, and she feels a twinge of shame because nothing in her life has ever required the kind of strength that this man has had to summon just to survive. She tries again to speak, but her voice comes out softer than she intended. "Sir," she says the words just barely above a whisper. "I understand," she pauses, trying to find the right words, but they seem to escape her somehow. "I understand more than you know," she says, and she's not sure why, but those words feel true in a way she didn't expect to say them. She watches him for a moment, and this time he doesn't look away. His eyes lock onto hers, and for the first time since they began speaking, there's a shift. Something in the air between them changes. It's subtle, but it's there, and for a brief moment she thinks she sees something in his eyes, not just strength, but vulnerability, something that makes her wonder if he's carrying a burden much heavier than he lets on, something he's never shared with anyone, not even the people closest to him. She stands there for a while, not saying anything, just looking at him, and he looks back at her as if waiting for her to make the next move, but she knows there's nothing left for her to say. All the rules in the world can't change the understanding that's passed between them in this quiet moment. They don't need words to communicate anymore, because somehow she knows this man has already won something that can't be taken away. The silence lingers in the cabin as the flight attendant stands there unsure of what to do next. She doesn't know how much time has passed, but it feels like a moment suspended in time, a moment where everything around her fades away, and all that's left is the man standing before her. She watches him closely, his posture unyielding, his eyes still focused on the horizon outside the window, his hands now resting more gently on the armrests. But there's a quiet intensity about him that she can't ignore. She feels it in the way his presence fills the space around him like an invisible force, a force that can't be contained or controlled. She wants to break the silence, to say something, anything, but the words don't come to her. Instead, she's left standing there, feeling the weight of everything that's unsaid between them. The other passengers have gone silent now. They're all watching the exchange, as though they can feel the tension in the air too. She can hear their soft murmurs, some of them curious, others uneasy, but none of them dare to speak up. None of them have the courage to challenge the silent battle that's unfolding in front of them. She wonders if any of them understand what's really happening here. Does anyone on this flight truly grasp the depth of this moment? She thinks back to the rules, the safety regulations that govern everything on the plane, but those rules feel so small now, so insignificant in comparison to what this veteran represents, to what he's lived through. She doesn't know what to say to him, but she knows she can't keep pushing. She can't keep trying to force him to sit down, not when she feels this heavy sense of respect for him. She glances at his medals again, the ones on his chest that still catch the light. Though they're old and worn, they shine with a certain dignity, a dignity that comes from earning something through blood and sacrifice. And she wonders how many other passengers on this flight have medals like those, how many of them have fought in wars, how many have survived battles that left them scarred in ways the world would never see. She can't help but feel a sense of awe, a sense of gratitude for this man who has lived through things she could never understand, and somehow come out the other side, still standing, still strong, still proud. She takes a deep breath, as if trying to steady herself, trying to find the words. But they don't come. Instead, she takes another step back and just stands there watching him. And for the first time since she approached him, she doesn't feel the need to fill the silence with words. She doesn't feel the need to fix anything or make things better, because somehow in this quiet moment, everything feels just right. Everything feels like it's exactly as it should be, as a deep understanding between them, now one that doesn't need words or explanations. It's as though they've both reached a silent agreement that transcends the rules and expectations of this flight. She realizes that she's not the one in control anymore. The veteran is. He's the one who has the power in this moment. And it's not a power of force or anger. It's a power that comes from years of experience, years of standing tall, when the world tried to knock him down. And in that moment, she feels a deep shift inside her. She no longer sees him as just a passenger. She sees him as something more, something worthy of admiration, something that commands respect. She glances around at the other passengers again, and she sees it now. They're not just watching, they're learning, they're witnessing something that most of them will never fully understand. But it's something they will never forget. Either they've been given a glimpse into the quiet resilience of a man who has stood tall through decades of hardship and history. And in this moment, they too are standing a little taller as a result of it. The flight attendant feels the weight of the moment more deeply. Now her heart beats steadily, but she can feel the tension in the air around her, like an unspoken bond between her and the man before her. It's not a bond formed through words, but through something far more powerful, something that can't be seen, but can be felt in the silence. She watches him closely and wonders how much longer he will remain standing, how much longer he will hold on to this quiet rebellion. It's clear now that he's not just standing because he's stubborn or because he's unaware of the rules. He's standing because there's something inside of him, something that drives him to keep going, something that has carried him through the hardest of times, something that won't allow him to break even now, even in this small moment. On a plane surrounded by strangers, she can see it in his eyes, the way they're locked onto the horizon, as if he's seeing something far beyond the window, the faintest flicker of memories flashing behind them. She can feel the presence of his past all around her. It hangs in the air, like a shadow that can't be shaken. She doesn't know why, but she feels like she's been allowed a glimpse into his life, a life that most people would never even imagine. She feels a stirring deep within her, a deep sense of gratitude for this man, and for the strength that he embodies. It's a strength that she can't fully understand, but she can certainly feel it. She feels a pull in her chest, like she's being called to stand beside him, to be part of something bigger than the rules of this plane, something that transcends the ordinary. It's at that moment that she realizes she's not the only one noticing the man's quiet strength. Other passengers are watching too. She can feel their eyes on her, as well as the veteran, their curiosity palpable. But it's not just curiosity, it's something else. It's respect, it's admiration for the courage this man has shown simply by standing here, by refusing to sit down when everyone else would have long ago given in. She wonders if any of them know his story. Do any of them know what it's like to fight for something bigger than themselves, to face down the worst the world can throw at you, and still stand strong? She feels a quiet pride for him, even though she's just met him. And she feels something else too, something that stirs deep inside of her, a recognition that this man represents something more than just the past. He represents the kind of resilience that the world so desperately needs now, the kind of resilience that doesn't break even when everything else around it crumbles. She takes another step back and just watches him for a while longer, her mind whirling, as she considers the implications of what's happening right now, this moment, this exchange between them. It's not something that happens every day. It's not something that can be easily explained, but it's happening, and she's part of it. She feels the weight of her role in this moment, and it's heavier than she expected. She's not just a flight attendant anymore. She's a witness to something far greater than her job, something that will stay with her long after this flight ends, something that will shape her perspective on the world in a way she can't fully understand. Yet she looks around at the other passengers once more, and this time it's different. She sees them not just as strangers on a plane, but as people who are also witnessing this quiet act of defiance, who are also learning something from this man's strength. And in that moment, she realizes that the veteran's quiet rebellion has taught them all something they didn't know they needed to learn, something that goes beyond the surface of everyday life, something that speaks to the heart of what it means to truly stand tall, no matter what life throws at you. The minutes stretch on, and the cabin remains filled with a quiet tension. The flight attendant still standing there watching the veteran as he stands tall, his posture unwavering, But there's something different now as she notices the subtle change in him, his stance, not quite as rigid as before, but still strong, still holding a presence that demands respect. She can feel it in the air around them. It's as though the entire plane has become aware of him, his quiet strength seeping into everyone's consciousness. Even the murmurs from the other passengers have stopped as they watch this unfolding moment. She wonders if anyone else has noticed the shift, the way his resistance has turned into something almost regal, not because he is trying to be noticed, not because he is looking for admiration, but because he's simply standing in a way that cannot be ignored. His eyes still gaze out the window, but they are no longer distant. They have softened just slightly, and for the first time in what feels like forever, the flight attendant wonders if he's finally letting down some of the walls he's built up over the years. She wonders if he's seeing something out there in the distance, something from his past, something that has long since faded, but will never truly leave him. She wonders if he's remembering the battles he fought, the comrades he lost, if he's thinking about the moments when standing tall truly meant the difference between life and death. She wonders how many times he's had to find the strength to keep going even when it felt like everything else was falling apart. And in that moment, she feels an overwhelming sense of empathy for him, not just for the man standing before her, but for the life he's lived. She feels a connection to him that goes beyond their roles as flight attendant and passenger. She feels a deep sense of understanding, as though she's glimpsed a part of him that no one else has ever seen, and yet she knows she'll never fully understand the depths of his experiences. She's seen enough to know that his strength runs deeper than anything she could have imagined, and it makes her feel small in comparison. It makes her wonder how she would have stood if she had been in his shoes. How would she have survived a life that had tested her in ways she could never even begin to fathom? The silence grows thicker still. No one speaks, not even a word, not a whisper. And it's then that the flight attendant makes a decision. She looks at the veteran one more time, and this time she doesn't speak, she doesn't say a word. Instead, she takes a small step back and turns to walk away. She doesn't know what's going to happen next. She doesn't know if he'll sit down, if he'll finally listen to her request, or if he'll continue to stand through the rest of the flight. But she knows that whatever happens next, it's not for her to control. She knows that this man has earned the right to make his own decisions, to stand his ground, and that no matter what happens, she won't be the one to take that from him. She walks down the aisle, feeling the eyes of the passengers on her, but she doesn't care. She's not focused on them anymore. She's focused on the feeling in her chest, the feeling that something has changed, something deeper than she can explain. The moment she shared with this man has left a mark on her, one that will stay with her long after this flight is over, and she can't help but wonder if anyone else on this plane will ever truly understand what they witnessed today, if they'll ever fully grasp the weight of that quiet rebellion that was not just about standing, but about surviving and enduring. When others would have fallen, she hopes they will, but she knows that only a few people in this world will ever understand the kind of strength it takes to stand tall in the face of everything that tries to knock you down. And she hopes that somewhere deep inside they too will stand just a little bit taller because of it. As the flight attendant walks down the aisle, she feels the weight of the moment settle on her shoulders. It's like the whole cabin is holding its breath, waiting to see what will happen next. She can sense the eyes of the other passengers following her as she moves, but she doesn't look back. She doesn't need to. The silence on the plane has become almost deafening. It's as if everyone is waiting for something to change, waiting for the veteran to finally sit down, or for the situation to resolve in some way. But the flight attendant knows deep down that it's already resolved in a way that no one else on this plane will fully understand. She walks past the rows of seats, but her mind is still with the veteran, still with the quiet defiance that he displayed so effortlessly. There's something in the air, now something different. It's not the usual hum of a flight, not the usual chatter of passengers going about their business. This is a tension that no one can ignore, no one can pretend is just part of the routine. This is something deeper, something that will stay with all of them long after the plane touches down somewhere below. She can feel it in her chest. And in her thoughts, she can feel the way the air around her has changed, as if the entire atmosphere of the flight has been altered by the silent exchange she shared with the man standing at the window. She looks out the window herself. For a moment, the view below is just a blur, the clouds stretching endlessly over the horizon. She wonders where this flight is headed, where the passengers are going, what they're running from, or what they're seeking. But in this moment, none of it matters the same way. The rules don't matter anymore, because the veteran has reminded her of something important, something bigger than all of this. He's reminded her that sometimes standing tall is more than just a rule. It's a testament to survival, a testament to the strength it takes to keep going when everything else says you should fall. The world is full of moments like this, ones that go unnoticed by most people. But not by her, not today. She'll carry this moment with her for the rest of her life. She'll carry the weight of it in her bones and in her heart. She knows that what happened today will stay with her always, just like the quiet strength of the veteran will stay with her long after the plane has landed. She reaches the back of the plane and stops for a moment, looking back toward the front of the cabin. She can still see him standing there, his back straight, his gaze fixed ahead. Nothing in his body language says he's going to sit down, not now, not ever. And somehow she knows that's exactly how it should be. She smiles to herself, a small smile, one that no one else will notice. But it's there, it's the kind of smile that comes from understanding that what just happened is bigger than any flight regulation, bigger than any protocol. It's a smile that says sometimes the greatest acts of strength are the quietest, the ones that don't make a sound, the ones that don't ask for attention, but still change everything in their wake. She takes one more deep breath and turns away, feeling the eyes of the passengers on her. But this time she doesn't care. She's not focused on them anymore. She's focused on the lesson she's learned today, a lesson about standing tall, a lesson about strength, a lesson that will stay with her long after the plane lands and the world returns to normal. She hopes that somewhere on this plane someone else has learned that lesson too. And she hopes that when they face their own battles, they'll remember the quiet man at the window, the one who stood because he had no other choice, the one who reminded them that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply remain standing tall.